This is the Horsemen podcast.
Have to rip some software. So 3, 2, 1.
Are you waiting for my clap?
I was. Thank you, Steve. And we are back. Episode 13 of the Horsemen podcast. And what a week. Going into the final week of the regular season, 11-0.
Who would have thought we would have been here?
I mean, I did.
Yes and no, but at the beginning of the year, every single one of us said, obviously, this is a special team, incredibly talented. I had a feeling 11-1, but all things considered, I honestly thought we were going to go 10-2 and drop a game to like a Pittsburgh. But here we are. We persevered, and it took a couple of weeks, but we finally got the eye of the tiger and started putting teams away in the fourth quarter in the second half. So yeah, we're 11-0, and that feels good to say.
And I made a bet with Mrs. Wagon before the season, and I said, if ND wins the national championship, knock on wood, we'll get a puppy.
Oh God,
we're 3 games away from me buying a dog. Let me tell you something. Financially, I'm worried. My apartment complex can't take a dog at the moment. I'm going to have an IOU for the dog. So future Nick was not considered when past Nick made the bet.
Well, an IOU is as good as cash.
Very true. Dylan, what are your thoughts right now about my past self writing checks that my future self has to cash?
I hope you have to cash it, because that would mean we won a national championship, and I would give up just about anything in this world to win one.
Yeah, me too. So we all know what happened this week. Dylan was holding down the fort on Twitter for us. I hope it was a good tweetable match. Steve and I were at the game, and Steve got to meet the patriarch of the Wagon family, my grandpa, as he was taking a picture with his girlfriend literally right next to me. Yeah. And I looked over and I said, I know that jersey. And it was Steve. So that was magical.
It was a flash in the pan moment. My other friend who I play soccer with just so happened to be at the game. He just so happened to be in your section. So we walked over to their section to take a picture for them. And yeah, just look over. There's Patty. And yeah, met Mr. Senior Wagon, and it was great.
Yeah, it was definitely a different game. The beers, not many ND games get beers sold of them. So I'm not sure what your prices are up there in Canada, Dylan, but it was like $11 for a 16-ounce cup, and then like $14 for a 24-ounce tall boy. So they were pretty pricey.
Yeah, that's a bit much even by our standards. Like, we bitch about going to hockey games or concerts or whatever, and just paying absurd prices for beer, but it's usually like between 10 and 13, and that's Canadian. So,
is that like $400 US?
We also went to the stadium since they renovated with all the food and concessions, and they were selling mixed drinks. You could get a Jack and Coke for like $18, which is wild.
We have to talk about how really you two lost this week. Specifically, that our Lord and Savior, Phil Jerkovich, did not come into the game. So I don't know. You have anything to say about it?
Well, has he now played in 3 games?
Oh, he has. So we got to kind of...
We've only got one left.
Oh, I was thinking we would play him. It's 4, right? He can play?
4, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So the big thing, I thought it was because Wimbush is from Jersey, and they wanted to kind of get him that last like hometown crowd feel. So it made sense. He's a senior. He's not going to be on ND next year. But what I really liked, and I'm not sure if anyone talked about it, but they put him in at running back in that split back package with Williams and him and Book. And that wasn't a strategic move by Kelly to get him into the game. It was rather to make Dabo Swinney, Nick Saban kind of look at it and give them fits in terms of
because now you have to account for 2 quarterbacks and 3 guys that can run the ball really well out of the backfield all at once.
They may never use it again. I know when I was a coach, we did that sometimes when we were going into a playoff game, when we knew they were scouting the game, just to give the other coach. So I thought that was interesting. As for the game itself, for me, biggest takeaway was our defense with the takeaways. See what I did there? I thought it was an awesome defensive game all around, and I really enjoyed watching a thorough browbeating of Syracuse. I'm considering it a shutout, even though Babers was petty and went for the field goal at the end of the game, with more boos rained down on him than I've ever heard in a stadium before.
Yeah, that was the biggest cocksucker move ever.
It was terrible. Dylan, thoughts?
Yeah, it was, ND Twitter was losing its mind. It was really funny. I think what's impressive there is that Syracuse was averaging, I think, 44.5 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
One of the top offenses in the country. Granted, they were playing horrific teams all year. But I think this was a game we finally saw the defense break through in scoring defense. So we've been seeing them play really well with the eyes. We've been seeing them in certain metrics playing really well, especially like in pass coverage. Sometimes we've been really good in not giving up many yards compared to what those teams average. But we hadn't seen it translate into basically low scoring games where it's shutouts or it's less than 10 points. So I thought that was really big, especially against Syracuse, to do it. We kind of got lucky here because, look, Syracuse is not really a top 25 team. And I know a lot of people are discrediting our win, and they're kind of right on it. We'll take it, and it looks good. And that's why we're a little lucky here is that Syracuse is kind of lucked out to be this good, to be 8-3 at this point. So it's like legitimately we could jump Clemson. I don't think we will, but we could. And it definitely, I think, saves us from anything like absurd like Michigan jumping us, beating another ranked team by 33 in a neutral zone. So we accomplished, I think, a lot of things in that game, but we really should have won that game by probably 50. And I'm not exaggerating.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Steve?
Yeah. I retweeted something earlier today that Notre Dame now has 4 opponents that they've beaten that are currently ranked as of week 13 in the top 25. Pitt, Syracuse, Northwestern, and obviously Michigan. So, and then you have to put in, the blue chip programs out there like Virginia Tech and Stanford. Yeah, they're both having down years. And you can even make a case for Florida State, who just upset Boston College. So people always say like, oh, join a conference, you need strength of schedule. But we haven't, we've played some down teams this year. All things considered, we've had a tough schedule and we've handled it.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd say like tough schedule because those ranked win teams have 4 losses, and we unfortunately and fortunately at the same time got those blue chip programs having down years. But what's important is the strength of record is number 1 in the country again. So that's it's not strength of schedule, but it's almost a better metric in the sense where it applies your record versus how other teams would have done with that same schedule.
Yeah.
And that's really important. And the committee does look at that.
Is that a new metric, Dill?
Yes.
They brought up this year?
What?
Is it a new metric?
Is that a new one that they brought out this year?
No, it's not. It's not this recent. I don't know when they brought it, but it's been around since at least the committee's been there.
Interesting.
And I would just like to point out that we're number 1 in strength of record, and we also have a stronger strength of schedule than both Alabama and Clemson.
Oh, really? I haven't seen.
I was looking at it earlier today. I think we're ranked 38th, and Clemson's in the 40s and Bama's in the 50s.
Right. It's really funny how our top wins and our toughest games have been against the teams you wouldn't have expected to be good this year. But one thing I did notice too, I've been kind of tracking efficiency scores as well. And Notre Dame has consistently improved offensively from week 1 to now. We're up there. We're in that top level. So we're seeing some of the deeper metrics kind of translating into blowout wins, which has been a criticism we got earlier in the year, despite the fact most of that was just Wimbush at quarterback and that one Pitt game, which now looks like an actual good team. So, yeah, I think it's all really coming together for us, and I don't think we've peaked yet, and that's the really, really important thing that I got away from this game was we're coming through on offense, we're coming through on defense, and we're still not quite reaching our full potential.
I love it, and I would agree with that. Really, last takeaway from the game, there was 48,000 people out in the game, and I think 47,000 of them were Notre Dame fans. So the Subway alumni do travel well.
I told you guys. I told you it would be an all Notre Dame crowd.
It was very interesting to see that, and my grandpa remarked, kind of just on an aside, there was so much different swag at the game. We saw people in George Gipp jerseys, the old school Pinstripe Bowl jerseys, the new Pinstripe Bowl jerseys, the hats that they were wearing. It was wild to see just all the different swag that the fans were, as kids would say, dripping in.
Yeah, that's a...
All right, I officially quit the podcast after you saying that.
All right, well, moving forward, 4 Horsemen by committee this week. We all know who they're going to be. I'll start with mine. Alohi Gilman, the man rocket, 2 interceptions. He was all over the field, and he is just a fantastic human being. His pursuit angles are some of the best I've seen, and he's the best. That's all I got for him. Dylan, who's one of your 4 Horsemen?
I agree with you there. First off, he was my number 1. I think he's probably defensive player of the country that week. Just unbelievable performance. Mine is going to my number 2, Chase Claypool. He had a fucking bomb of a game. I think he had close to 90 yards on 7 receptions and a touchdown. He was just all over the place, making some great grabs.
Steve, who's yours?
You know what? This guy deserves it for working his ass off and being a quasi backup, I guess I'd say. But hey, Kurt Heinisch, first career sack. He ended up with 1.5 on the day with 2 tackles, 1 assisted. So congrats, Kurt.
Big fan of Kurt. And our 4th one, bouncing back from possible kidney failure or whatever happened to him last week. Ian Book, he was rusty, but I think he played well enough to show that he is ready for 3 more games. And I think we're ready for him to be ready for 3 more games. He played well. He is a very crafty individual when you see him throw some of those passes. And I thought he played very, very sound football against a tough defense.
I got kind of 2 things to say before we move on to our next segment there.
Sure.
One, I don't imagine you guys saw this because it was on the graphic on NBC, so I'll just let you know.
Was Doug Flutie terrible again this week?
Yes, he always is. I've learned to drain him out. He threw a baseball before the game, and it's like, go fuck yourself. Nobody gives a shit. I can't. It's like NBC's teasing us with this. They know we want Quinn, but they're just not going to do it. Anyway, that's beside the point. They pointed out that he is very close to the all-time quarterback completion percentage for a season. Colt McCoy is number 1. He underperformed this week, his percentage, but with 3 games left, it's actually something we could see him come close to breaking. And then the second thing is, kind of before we move on, I think everyone would be really interested in hearing what your perspective was at Yankee Stadium, because you guys were actually at the game. What was it like to kind of experience a football game in a baseball field that isn't Fenway Park, so it's inferior?
Steve, I've been to a few games at Yankee Stadium for football, so I'll let you go first, as this was your first ever college game?
College game.
Okay.
First ever big time football game. The only football game I've ever been to other than, high school prior to this was a preseason Patriots game. So this was my first ever college game, first ever Notre Dame game, and it was my first ever game at New Yankee Stadium. First ever event at New Yankee Stadium, which is an absolute cathedral. It was awesome. It was really cool. I think it would have been, obviously, the novelty of the game in Yankee Stadium in New York was really unique. I don't think it would even come close to a game actually in Notre Dame Stadium. But the ability to grab some beers at the game and get wasted while watching them absolutely dominate was truly special. Was celebrating and dapping up a bunch of people after every big play, every first down, every big third down stop, and turnover. So the crowd was raucous, but everyone was kind of cool, which you don't expect in New York. But most fans were traveling, so they weren't New York douchebags. And and yeah, I mean, it was great. I was in the right field, which was basically right on the 50-yard line, maybe the 45. And it was a great view. Even though we were pretty far away, I was able to see everything. So all things considered, I mean, it was truly an amazing experience.
That's pretty great. I was thinking, because next week we don't play a game, so we'll have a lot of time to talk about things. And maybe we could talk about our experiences going to college football games. I know P's been to a few Notre Dame games, and I've been to one. We could play a little quiz or something. So hopefully people tune in next week as well, because even though we're not playing or previewing a game, we'll have lots of content.
I thought you meant the USC game that they weren't playing. I thought that was just a very, very like petty thing that you were saying about the rivalry, and that's why I laughed there. But this is my third trip to Yankee Stadium. I've sat in 3 different sections, and I've takeaways from all of them. My first one was the first ever Pinstripe Bowl. I sat in the bleachers, K-State Rutgers. That was really effing cold. I don't recommend sitting at a baseball stadium in December. Weird, right? And then the second one was Notre Dame Rutgers Pinstripe Bowl. I sat behind home plate, second level. That was pretty cool. And then this one I think was my favorite one of them all. Not just because it was a blowout, but the corner end zone seat I was in, even though it was on the 4th upper deck, the top of the stadium, I definitely think that had the best fans, the most passionate fans. And what was really cool about that, at the end of the game, there was this, I guess he was drunk, father. He brought his kids down to the first level. I was sitting in row 3, so he got down to row 1. And his wife was trying to like dip out of the game to beat traffic, which there's always traffic in the city, so she was new. And he looked at her and go, "No, I need my sons here," because alma mater was going to be playing. And he was like teaching them a life lesson about Notre Dame, which was super cool to like look on as like a bystander. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah. But, we're done with USC or Syracuse, whatever they were. Put Dino Babers and his petty ass in the books.
We're pretty much with USC, too.
And we are done with USC. Hashtag done. But we're moving on to USC. Clay Helton, whatever his name is, Clay Helton. He's going to be out of there before the end of the week. We're recording this on a Monday. Wouldn't be surprised if they fire him by Friday. He is not doing well. They lost to UCLA, and they may miss a bowl game this year. So this USC game has multiple meetings. It'll lock up our college football playoff spot, but it will also knock USC out of the playoff or out of a bowl game. So I'm excited to think that USC is very good in anything that they do. And I think their quarterback, JT Daniels, has reached his peak, which is unfortunate because he's an 18-year-old freshman who can't throw a ball down the field. So that's my quick overview of USC. And I think I hate USC more than most teams on the schedule, to be honest with you. So do we have any quick takeaways, quick thoughts about the USC game? Spread is at 10.5 right now.
I do have some breaking news. Can I have a breaking news siren or something?
We'll put it in after, but boo, woo, woo, woo.
Just keep it at that. Actually.
Thank you. So we just committed a 4-star outside linebacker from Georgia. His name is J.D. Bertrand. 6'1", 220 pounds from Roswell, Georgia, class of 2019.
Oh.
And we beat out both Georgia and Florida for that recruit. So that's a good feeling.
Yeah, he decommitted from Georgia a few weeks ago.
And we got the number one punter from Alabama, too. So the South is Notre Dame's now.
Yeah, and you know how well friggin' Nick Saban does with recruiting special teamers.
So we got Jay Bramble at 2, the punter. I'm really excited to have him on the team. We got Newsom out of Georgia. So, special teamers out of the South are playing big, and getting that linebacker is even bigger, especially because he's a 4-star.
Mm-hmm. All right, back to USC.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on USC?
Dylan, I'll let you take this.
Sure. I've bet on them a few times, and they've cost me, so I don't like them. I mean, it's a rivalry game. It's the Trojans. You always get up for it. But this year, they're not good. And I kind of had a feeling UCLA would beat them, and they did, which is hilarious. I don't know who's been more of a disappointment this year, Florida State or USC, because USC might end up with the worst record. And when you consider how decent they were supposed to be, I think they were ranked higher than Florida State at the start of the season. Everyone's talking about Florida State being a disappointment. Fuck, we got to talk about USC. They're not good. They get run on, they get passed on. I'm sure they got an explosive offense because they always do. But look, we beat them 49-14 last year. That's 35 points. And they had an NFL starting quarterback.
It was Sam Darnold. Pump your brakes there. He's not a actual starting quarterback. He's a fat-faced asshole, and he can't even throw. He looks like he has mumps.
It's a trigger topic for P-Wagon, how much he hates Sam Darnold. But I think my point is kind of obvious, where we beat them by 35 with, an NFL-level quarterback. Whether he's good or not this year is a second point. But we're going to destroy them. 10.5 is ridiculous. Like, I would put it at 21, and I think I would still take the points on Notre Dame there because they're bad. They're a bad football team, and our football team's going to the playoff. And make no mistake about it, they will not be sleeping in a rivalry game with that on the line. So, yeah, I said we're pretty much done with USC already because the game's going to be over before it started.
That just made me incredibly nervous. I have massive anxiety that those words were just said out loud. I don't think I'm going to get any sleep tonight, so thank you for that. We are obviously the superior team, but yeah, man, it's USC. This could go one of two ways. These kids could just be like, yeah, you know what? It's Thanksgiving. Let's just get through this so I can go home and don't have to, like, that's it. I can rest my body for the next 8 months, right? These kids are just going to go to the beach because they have phony ass fans from a stupid school that produced like Will Ferrell. Like, cool. Yeah, so it's all bandwagon fans that have other things that they care about. They're not diehards. They're not true fans like us. So it's a candy ass program, to be frank.
They don't got
these kids. Hopefully these kids are just over it and want to hit the beach, and then our guys can just be like, you know what? We can't take this for granted. Go home for Thanksgiving, get your shit done, and then get to the freaking LA and just rub their face in the dirt.
I'm looking at the team stats values per game. They're averaging 239 yards of passing, 138 rushing, so 377 yards of total offense. Their defense has given up 380, and it's a rough one. They definitely have a very interesting season. And it's not good. They are 85th out of 130 for points per game, and they are 69th out of 130 in opponents' points per game. Nice. Their strength of schedule ranks 42nd. Strength of record, 62nd, 2.21, whatever that means. And their averaging -4 points if we wanted to do a rugby point differential. They're -4 for the season.
Yeah,
that's rough.
But it's a rivalry game, so even though everything I just said could go out the window, I don't think it will because Steve, you pointed out USC fans. It has to be a West Coast thing because you see it with the Seahawks, you see it with the Vancouver Canucks. If you want to get to hockey, it's like those fans out there just are fair weather, and that's the way it is. The Rams the same way. Nobody was going to their games 2 years ago. So yeah, I can't imagine USC fans are looking forward to this game. I'm sure they do because it's a premier rivalry, but they know they're going to get spanked. And I can't imagine the players are looking forward to it, right? They're going to play for a coach who they know is getting fired. They may not get into a bowl game. They're going to play a team that's going to dominate them physically for 4 quarters. Yeah, I just wouldn't want to be a Southern Cal fan right now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sacramento, California is in Northern California. Is that correct?
I think so.
What's in Northern California? Repeat that.
Sacramento.
Yes, it is.
So we got Northern California, Ian Book, coming down to Southern California just to browbeat all those Southern California surfers over there. So there's another storyline that everyone should watch out for. But interesting, I just pulled up Vivid Seats, and if I could get a ticket out to LA, I could go to the game for cheap. $73 a seat right now in the end zone. Row 14L. Pretty interesting.
Nice.
So that's a sign that the team's down this year. A Notre Dame USC game getting sold for that little of price. That's interesting.
Yeah, I wonder how the viewership's going to be because it depends on the year. So if Notre Dame and USC aren't really playing for anything, they get average ABC viewers. But in 2012, they cleared house on Rivalry Week. They blew past everybody because Notre Dame was number 1. Now that's because it was to get into the championship game directly. I wonder if that same effect is going to happen for this game. I don't think so because I don't think the hype is there right now because we're number 3 in the country. It's not like we're getting right into the title game. But I'm interested to see how many people turn into ranked Notre Dame versus a bad USC. Because one of these years we'll get a top-ranked matchup in Southern Cal to end the year, and I swear the ratings will break. It'll bust the national championship. But until then, USC sucks.
No, I'm looking at the top 25 schedule, and this kind of goes into our college football rivalry part. Actually, first prediction for the game at 10.5 over under 53. I'm saying Notre Dame 54, USC 0.
Wow.
Steve?
You already know 100 USC, ND nothing. I just got to fulfill my superstitions and just do my duty and get us to the next game.
Do your job, Steve. And Dylan?
Oh, boy. I believe in, 1966, Notre Dame went to USC and beat them, was it 59-0?
Sure, let's go with that.
49-0. It was a monster score. And it's actually swayed both the AP and the coaches poll to give it to Notre Dame instead of Michigan State, who they drew recently in that year, making it a consensus title. So Michigan can fuck off trying to claim that one. But I think it won't be that bad. But we're going to see, I think, a dominating performance. I'm going to say 46-10. Big score. That's 36 points. And I think 10 is generous. So,
very, very generous.
And I think 46 is we're giving it easy in the fourth quarter. It's 46 in the fourth quarter, and we're just all right, let's just kill the clock.
Put Wimbush in and just have him run the ball.
Yeah.
Well, I would agree. And we're looking at the top 25 schedule. It's rivalry week, obviously. We have Mississippi State Ole Miss on Thursday, which is a pretty good Thanksgiving game. I'll tune into that. And wait, Dylan, when's your Thanksgiving?
October.
What?
Why?
Because the Commonwealth countries have their Thanksgiving earlier. Yeah.
Do you eat turkey? This is an abbreviated Ask a Canadian. Do you eat turkey during your Thanksgiving?
Yeah, I mean, this year I had ribs. It's easy to make, but usually families with people that have the ability to cook will have turkey.
So
Wow.
what do you do for the football games on Thursday?
So, well, Thanksgiving's on a Monday, and we celebrate it on Sunday. It's a little weird like that. We get the Monday holiday off.
But I'm talking, and you're a Dallas Cowboys fan, so like they usually play. So like, what are you gonna be doing this Thursday?
This Thursday, I'm just gonna be watching the Cowboys play. That's it.
Do you have
Why don't you celebrate real Thanksgiving?
Well, I told you guys actually. I don't think you must have missed it in the chat. I said real Thanksgiving's in October. So I mean, I celebrate.
Oh no, we saw that. We just ignored you because you were wrong.
Okay.
And no, so we're recording early, and this is kind of an Ask an American segment, real quick, before we get into the rivalries, and I'll let Steve go. We're recording on a Monday. We usually like to wait to see how far Michigan will fall out of the rankings tomorrow because they only beat Indiana by 11. But Steve is celebrating Black Wednesday this year. Do you have, or every year, do you have anything like that where you go out and get hammered the night before Canadian Thanksgiving?
Not that I know of. I'm sure people do because that would be a Saturday night. So, that's just normal. But no tradition that I know of. Yeah, I don't think we make as big of a deal of it as you guys do. Like you play your football games on Thursday. You stops working on Thursday. We just put it till the weekend. So
some of us stop working the week before Thanksgiving.
Hey.
It's funny. But no, Black Wednesday is an awesome tradition. Steve, I know that you love it.
It's my favorite night of the year.
You go back to your hometown.
In the last 3 years, I've lost a phone 2 times, and also last year I booked a cab from Providence to North Station at peak hours, which they actually rang up my card for about $350.
Jeez.
So I've been known to drink a little bit, but it's the best day of the year.
So that's that. I hope we taught you something, that Black Wednesday is a thing. And that was our abbreviated Ask a Canadian.
And with that, I'm going to take my leave, and I'm going to let you guys let it rip on the top 10 and who they're playing and rivalries. Unfortunately, I gotta leave, but we had a conversation about this earlier in the group chat, and I'm sure you guys are going to let it rip now.
Sounds good. Go Irish.
Better than Joe, man.
Go Irish. Take care, guys.
All right. And Steve is gone. 3, 2, 1. I don't want to clap. Everyone's sleeping. So, moving into the college football rivalry game, Friday, we have Texas, Kansas, East Carolina, Cincinnati, which doesn't really matter. UCF, South Florida. Then South Florida could pull the upset. And then we have Oklahoma, West Virginia at 8 p.m. and Washington State. Going into the Saturday schedule, ND is the 8 p.m. game. Should be on ABC. And there's really no other really marquee 8 p.m. matches. But there are some rivalries, and I know you wanted to talk about this a little bit more. What's your stance on college football rivalries? Where does Notre Dame USC rank?
Well, I mean, the biased fan of me says number 1, of course. But I did put out a tweet today that ranked them. So for rivalries for me, I kind of broke it into 3 groups. Like there's the hatred and the heat of the rivalry, which admittedly Notre Dame doesn't really have for any rivalry. We're not really a hateful bunch. We don't really have just that in-state, like, I want to kill the other fan base too much. Part of that's probably because USC fans are jokes. So we don't have that, but what we have, and I think another major part is how historic are the 2 programs, right? Like a rivalry is better when the teams are competing for something. And as I said, there is no 2 programs. I mean, maybe Alabama sneaking into the number 2 spot, but no 2 rivals that are more historic and more successful than Notre Dame and USC. You look at the combined honors of titles, Heisman, draft picks, Hall of Famers. Nobody combines for more than Notre Dame and USC. So it's a big game. I pointed out to a Michigan fan who was bragging about the 10-year war with Ohio State that produced 0 national champions. But you look at the 11-year war between Notre Dame and USC, and I believe it produced 5. I mean, every year they were playing for a national championship. And it was like that a lot throughout history, spoiling each other and stuff like that. So when you factor that in with the, mild hatred, and then the third category was how did the general population look at it? I put Notre Dame USC overall at number 3. I had Michigan Ohio State number 1 because they're probably number 2 in that like historic thing because they are blue bloods, although both of them are behind Notre Dame and USC.
Right.
Number 1 in hatred with Alabama and Auburn, who I had number 2 because that's really perceived as a top one. So that was my top 3. Oklahoma, Texas, number 4, and then Army, Navy, number 5. I don't really like that rivalry because I don't care, but I realize a lot of people do. So I put it 5th.
Interesting. So I have a kind of a different slant on it, and I understand that you go based off of stats and numbers and all that, but that's not really who I am. I definitely think there are rivalries in America that are bigger than the game itself. And one of them really that transcends sport is the Harvard-Yale game. I know it's an Ivy League, not really a perennial contender, but that and Army-Navy are kind of tied at the top for me just because it does transcend sport. And really, based off of that, I do understand that there are some regional rivalries that we see, and really Notre Dame USC would probably be my number 2, just based off of everything that you said. It's really had those historic moments, and none other than the Bush push, the 2012 game, just to name 2 recent ones. And off of that, I think number 3 would have to probably be Michigan, Ohio State, just not so much for the game itself, because Ohio State has won, I think, a ridiculous amount over Michigan because Jim Harbaugh can't win a big game. But the regional rivalry there, the hate is there, much like with Bama-Auburn. That one, the Iron Bowl, is always one of those matchups, along with the Egg Bowl in the SEC or Mississippi State. Those are 2 regional rivalries that actually breed hate and contempt. So really, how I think of rivalry and how you would define a rival in sport outside of statistics would really be if a fan of the other team was on fire, would you put them out? And I don't think the ones that I mentioned, besides Army Navy, because they're gentlemen and they would, USA all the way. Other than that, I don't think any of the other ones would. And really, my number 5 rivalry, it's really the Four Horsemen podcast against Doug Flutie, because I absolutely hate that man. But no, I think there are some. I think the Red River Shootout, Oklahoma, Texas, does deserve to be number 5, again, for that regional conflict there. And the Florida rivalries were there at some point, but no one really cares about the state of Florida anymore, which is unfortunate. They fell off so quickly. And that's where I'm at with my college football rivalries. And I know the Harvard-Yale game was last weekend, and Army-Navy coming up. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, had Michigan not chicken shitted their way from Notre Dame for about 60 years in the early 1900s, that would be the number 1 game, hands down, because that's actually the oldest FBS rivalry is Notre Dame Michigan. Yeah, because Notre Dame was older than Ohio State, so they've been playing Michigan longer, but they've only played, less than 50 times in 130 years because Michigan did a lot of scummy stuff, which I'm sure we must have outlined in the very first podcast. So that would be number 1. But again, we didn't play enough. Although the hatred is there, at least for me. Like I really hate Michigan. But USC is our rival. USC is a better program than Michigan, so I have a lot more kind of respect for that rivalry. It's like Michigan's whatever. They've really not been a historic team since the 40s. Maybe even before that, as where USC has been pretty consistent throughout their history, and it's always been a good game. So I got a lot more respect for USC as a program, and I do like not their fight song, but the tribute to Troy, the one they play on defense. I know that's sacrilegious, and a lot of Notre Dame fans might kill me for that, but the dun na 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 da da dun dun da, I love that. I think it's great. So
I hate everything about the organization, including their horse. But I know we were talking, and you posted on Twitter. Follow us on Twitter at pwagon60, at dillydylan97, and follow the podcast at 4horsemenpod. You mentioned something about USC and ND not playing every the last weekend of every season and kind of alternating that game.
Oh, yeah.
You know where it started, right?
From what I heard, I believe it was in the 60s that USC was fed up of playing in the cold, so they asked their name to change it to October.
It's actually going back further. 1926, Mrs. Rockney, Newt Rockney's wife, and USC athletic director's wife, Wynn Wilson, that was athletic director, his wife, had a conversation, and they wanted to do a home and home series. And Mrs. Wilson persuaded Mrs. Rockney that a trip every 2 years to sunny Southern California was better than a snowy, hostile Nebraska for Thanksgiving, because the Rockneys are from Nebraska.
Right.
And then Mrs. Rockney spoke to Coach Rockney, and on December 4th, 1926, USC and Notre Dame began their rivalry. And then there's another one. That's one that I've heard and I've recounted.
Right.
But there was another one where Notre Dame couldn't schedule a local Western Conference opponent because a lot of schools were just saying, F this, like Notre Dame, you're too good.
No,
we can't play.
because Michigan had blackballed Notre Dame from the conference at the time.
Correct.
They were bigoted towards Catholics, plus they just didn't like the school, so they told everybody, because they had that influence, to not play Notre Dame, which is why we ended up playing some of the service schools and some of the West Coast schools. But yes, continue.
No, and that's the reason. And then Howard Jones came in, and this was after Notre Dame won the championship in 1924, and he said, "Hey, we would love to, play you guys in Pasadena in January." And it was just a friendship that they had. So it was pretty interesting that between a conversation between wives and the respect that Coach Jones and Coach Rodney had for each other, that got to this point. And kind of tongue-in-cheek, when Notre Dame gets a home game, they played in October just to mess with USC a little bit, which is kind of my favorite thing in sports. Because
I take issue with that.
It's cold. You don't want to play cold weather games, so it's one of those things.
Yeah, you made a good point that it originally started in October, but for a long time they did play every Thanksgiving. And that did change after a while because they didn't like playing in, South Bend in November.
Notre Dame doesn't either this year, apparently.
Yeah, but my issue with it is that all of the top rivalries, except Oklahoma, Texas, and Army, Navy, but whatever, are played on rivalry week. Michigan, Ohio State, the Iron Bowl, Clemson, South Carolina, Florida State, Georgia Tech. They're all this week. It's called rivalry week. And it's just kind of annoying that this rivalry is right up there, but it almost gets sometimes forgotten because it's not always played on that week. And I would like it to be every year on Thanksgiving. I get that Notre Dame has liked we get to go to California and recruit after the season's done for a week. But come on, you can do that when you're there anyway.
No, I know what you mean. And one final point, which I kind of is more indicative of the weather. It was very interesting at the Syracuse game, or the Notre Dame game. Sorry about that. You looked on the sideline, and it was pretty windy, pretty cold. I think towards the fourth quarter, got down to the mid-30s in Fahrenheit. And with that, you saw the Syracuse bench the whole game sitting on their bench, not standing on the sideline, to stay warm, while all of Notre Dame players were standing up on the sideline supporting the team. And I get they were getting their brow beaten, and it was 10-0 before anyone knew what would happen. But I never realized how much the weather affects dome teams and warm weather teams than I did on Saturday. So that's interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I didn't realize that. I knew some of the southern teams didn't like it because, the weather, but I didn't realize that it affects dome teams as well.
Apparently, the Carrier Dome's set at a consistent 70 degrees at all times. So you figure you're playing in 70-degree weather, practicing everything in that weather. You go outside, you're going to be affected.
Right.
And all those people working out without their shirts on, that's just stupid. But that's beside the point there. I take issue with that. But back to the kind of rivalry aspect, I definitely think we touched on some pretty good points about that. I know that this year isn't really a marquee ND USC matchup, but to kind of circle back to your first point, I definitely think being 8 p.m. ABC Thanksgiving Eve, the 2 days after Thanksgiving. Okay, I didn't know if I was frozen or not. The 2 days after Thanksgiving, a marquee game. I think that'll be the game of the week that everyone watches.
It could be, yeah, because I don't think Notre Dame USC has played in prime time
in a while.
3 weeks since 2012, which is where they had, I think, like 16 million viewers. They blew
Right.
the game out of the water. And usually Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama win that. But that year it was us. So now that it is prime time too, I wonder, because even when Notre Dame and Stanford's prime time, it does well. It gets like 7-8 million. So I think you're right. I think it will be definitely top 3 this week because it's on ABC. For some reason, NBC college football just doesn't get as good ratings. Like it doesn't. They just, for some reason, it doesn't matter who we're playing, the ratings just aren't as high as if that same game was on ABC. Maybe you can elaborate on that some other time to explain to me why. But I think it's going to be a big game. They're 2 big names too, right? If you're a casual fan and it's 8 p.m. and Michigan State, Ohio State's over, Alabama, Auburn's over, who are you turning on? Probably those 2 teams, because you either hate Notre Dame or you're like, damn, these are 2 brand name schools going at it. Let's watch it. Because I don't know what the other 8 o'clock games are, but I can't imagine it's better than Notre Dame USC.
I'm looking at it right now, and I don't think there is many. Pulling off the full schedule here, probably bad radio, but whatever. You're listening to us. Let's see here.
Thank you. And tweet us questions or comments, and we will feature you on the podcast. We want to get more involved with fans, so please join us anytime.
Except if you're Sam Darnold. South Carolina and Clemson starts at 7. LSU, Texas A&M, 7:30. The only one they're really going up against is Oklahoma State TCU, and that's a whatever. So really the 7 o'clock slate is Kentucky, Louisville, Kansas State, Iowa State, Colorado, California, San Jose State, Fresno State, North Texas, UTSA, beep, beep. And then you have South Carolina, Clemson, LSU, TAMU.
Yeah.
So
TAMU might be decent because both of them are kind of good. But again, much more at stake for Notre Dame. That should win the primetime viewership. How many ratings it gets compared to the Iron Bowl and Michigan, Ohio State would be interesting.
You know what's bullshit? And I know you mentioned this before.
Yeah.
This may be my last point for the night. You have one of the best rivalries in college sports, not by our standard, the objective viewership standard. Michigan, Ohio State kicking off at noon, and then you have the Iron Bowl kicking off at 3:30. It's like I don't get it.
Obviously on Twitter, I kind of made fun of Michigan for it. I've gotten a lot of responses saying that's tradition. It's their tradition to do so. But, I'd like to say, where does that tradition come from? It's probably to avoid conflict in viewership with Alabama, Auburn, and more than anything, Notre Dame, USC, especially for the national crowd. And even if Michigan, Ohio State beats them all in ratings, which some years it does, you don't want to compete. And the networks don't want that too. Why the hell would the network want, CBS and then Fox want that at the same time, right? You're just eating each other's viewership. So,
yeah, I get that, but still, it is some of the games like
because Michigan never played night games until us in 2011. I just think it's very small-timey mentality. It's just, you're not a national program, not a national brand, unless you're Notre Dame. We're the only true one, and I know we're getting a little full of ourselves right now. But think about it. We're prime time whenever we're good.
Yeah.
And no team can claim that. None. Not Michigan this year. Not at all. I mean, a lot of their games have been noon kickoffs or afternoon. So, it's, good on Michigan Ohio State for getting it off and giving us a reason to get up in the morning. But, the big show at the end of the night is going to be Notre Dame USC.
I mean, yeah, and the last point, and we'll touch on this a little bit more while we wait for wherever ND is going to be, but it's NBC, and I know a lot of people say, oh, why don't you join a conference? We've beaten the ACC champion, whoever it is.
Division champion.
No, the champ. Oh, well, Clemson would be in that one of the.
Yeah, that's we've beaten the ACC division champ.
Whatever. The ACC division champ, but, hail to Pitt. Hopefully they win. And then we beat both the Big Ten. Whoever wins the Big Ten, we beat them.
Well,
so we don't need to join conference, right?
Well, pretty much you're right there. We've beaten the Big Ten West champion in Northwestern. I think that's West.
And the presumed Michigan champion.
But a lot of people are just assuming Michigan is in the playoff and winning that game. I think we need to hold our horses there.
Okay.
If Michigan does win, you are correct. We will have had a winner over a Big Ten. But, I mean, and this is what I was going to say right before we left, maybe we should do a few kind of quick predictions of the games, because I'm saying Ohio State's going to beat Michigan in Columbus. It's going to be a good game, a very close game. But death taxes and Ohio State beating Michigan, and I think that's going to come through. And it will be very demoralizing for Michigan fans, because if you don't beat Ohio State now, when will you ever?
I agree. So I'm in the same boat there. I think Ohio State is the win. They'll win that game. Oklahoma, West Virginia, who you got?
Oklahoma. I have a little bit of a love affair for the Sooners when we're not clashing, like when we don't have competing for a spot or something. I will like them. Good traditional school, Baker Mayfield, exciting football. I think I'm hoping Oklahoma's the 4th seed. So I'm going to take the Sooners to win that game. It'll be a shootout, though. 2 Heisman candidates going at it.
I agree. So this is really uninteresting that we have the same points. Bama, Auburn.
Alabama. Auburn will win those games when Auburn is good as well, like last year or the year on the miracle missed field goal return. But when Auburn is mediocre, they tend to get rolled over by Alabama. And I don't know if the game's in Tuscaloosa this year. I think it is.
Pulling it up right now.
I just think Alabama's too much. I would love it if Auburn could win. If Auburn were to win, I think their blueprint is actually what the Citadel did. And that is run the ball and control 90% of the time of possession and go into halftime 10-10.
Yep.
It's a rivalry game. I just think Alabama's defense is going to be much more up to the task. I think Auburn is going to struggle to get their offense going, and I think Bama will just kind of pick them apart, offensively.
War damn Eagle.
Yeah, I hope so.
Gus Malzahn's offense, and I know I ran it pretty handedly over for a 4-year period. They control the ball, and when you run that read option, you're trusting your defensive end, who's an 18-year-old college kid, to be right at all times. You can't be right at all times. So they run this spread, not to get too technical here, but they run the spread win tee. And that's what it is. If you just break it down to brass tacks, that's what they run. That's what a lot of programs are running now. It's hard to stop when you play in that traditional spread offense because the defenses have to adjust. So you spread them out wide, you bring the F back in, you do some slide motions or any type of motion into the box. And that's how Notre Dame scored against Syracuse with Armstrong. They ran kind of that counter play on the goal line. And, Auburn's offense is going to be predicated on not only counter plays, but they're going to be predicated on just that big type of play to really slow down Auburn's prolific offense. So it's going to be a very interesting stylistic matchup. And I definitely think that while Alabama does have the edge, if they do what the Citadel does, like you said, you kind of stole my point there. It could be 10-10 at halftime, 17-17 to 7-7. And you don't want to get into a war in the fourth quarter with a team who can just run the ball and control clock.
Well, that's the thing with Alabama. You just got to get within a score in the fourth quarter. I have two things to say to that. One, I'm concerned that when Auburn is on third down and needs to throw the ball, they will not be able to because
not at all. They're not relying on trick plays there.
I think he's a decent quarterback. I just think Alabama's secondary is really good. So that's my one concern. But I really hope you're right, and I would love to see it. My second thing is, wouldn't it be hilarious if we played Alabama in the playoff or whatever, and we ran the triple option? Like we completely reinvented everything to mess with them and to just try to run out the clock and win at like a 13-7 game.
Throw Wimbush in the backfield with Buck and
exactly. They'd be unstoppable.
I mean, I was thinking you can do a lot of things with that split backfield. And I advocated for it, not going to lie. I advocated it for the beginning of the season when you run Book, Wimbush, Armstrong, and Williams all in the backfield, the old school four horsemen offense. And you hand it off, you let them throw. You obviously don't let the two running backs throw, but I think that'd be interesting. And moving forward from there, we got another SEC matchup that no one really cares about. Georgia Tech.
Hey, Georgia Tech, ACC school, but I'll let that one slide. I'm going to say, oh boy, that's another good one. Dare I say it, I think Georgia Tech might pull off the upset.
Oh, wow.
Now, let me really, hold myself down before, exposed, frozen, cold takes, blows me up for it. Georgia Tech plays Georgia tough. It's a good rivalry. Georgia Tech plays the triple option offense. Georgia Tech's not too bad this year, and Georgia I don't think is as good as we think this year because Georgia really hasn't faced too many tough teams, and when they have, they split 1-1, right? They beat Florida, who I don't even think is really that good, and they lost to LSU. So I don't think we really know how good Georgia is, and I think that's a possible game where Georgia Tech wins it. Now, do they play that home and home, or is that always in like a neutral site game? Do you know?
I believe it's neutral site. I'll check that right now while we go into our last game. It's the Apple Cup. It's Washington State. And it should be of note that we only did games that had so I'm sorry for those of you who wanted to hear about our Egg Bowl. Egg Bowl takes are the I-90 showdown of UCF and South Florida, but we don't care about them. So with that, Washington State. While I look up this Georgia Tech one,
sure.
It's played in Georgia, so it's a home and home.
Right. So it's going to be at Athens.
Yeah.
Right. So that's obviously dampers a little bit of what I said there, but we'll see. I mean, Georgia should win that game. I'm trying to have both my cake and eat it too here, but watch out for Georgia Tech this week. Do you know what the line is?
I lost it again because I closed it out. It is dead air, bad radio. The line is 17 right now.
Yeah, I would take Tech to cover. I think they could win it outright. We'll see. I mean, that's going to be a good game. And that would be really funny if Georgia loses but then beats Alabama. That's even a crazier scenario. But to move on to the worst conference of the Power 5, the Pac-12, I'm going to say Washington wins because I don't think Wazoo is very good. I know I've been saying that about a lot of teams. I think they're kind of a fluke to be this good because the Pac-12 is bad. They've beaten teams who at the moment looked good and who in retrospect hasn't really performed at all, so like Oregon, Stanford. They've lost to USC. So, keep that in mind. Washington, on the other hand, has been pretty good. They lost to, I believe it was Oregon in overtime, and they've lost to Auburn. And then I think there might be another L in there. It might be to Utah or something like that. Or no, it's Cal, I think. They're a good team. Washington is a good, solid team. I think Wazoo in the same, is in the same category. but I think Wazoo is rated way above of where they really are. You know, to be fair with their ranking, they deserve to be where they are, but I don't think they're a.
Sorry, that's a clock.
Okay, we'll cut that.
Yeah, so I agree. I don't think Garrett Minshew is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a good person. I think he has an ugly mustache. There's a lot of things I don't like about him. I think Ian Book is a more viable quarterback, and the name Garrett is a stupid name. So there's my take. I bet you can know where I'm going with this. Chris Peterson is a good coach, and I think Washington will win the game.
Yeah, so we're 3 for 3, eh? On the same.
And that's what it looks like. So other than that, that's all the things I got for tonight. And
are you taking Bulldogs?
Oh, I didn't say that. I guess we have to go with Georgia. Unfortunately, Georgia. I don't think Georgia Tech can pull it off.
All right, we should put our like spreads out there and see which one of us does better.
Yeah, well, I don't remember what I said, so I'll have to listen to this back and see what I did there. But other than that, big week this week. USC, they've done nothing of note, and we're going to beat them. And then book a trip to the college football playoff where anything can happen. This is a friendly reminder. Follow us on Twitter at Horsemen Pod, at PWagon60, at DillyDilla97, and at Steve Campy. Subscribe, rate, unsubscribe, resubscribe, do all that stuff to get us up there in the rankings. Spotify said they will drop us if you don't do that for us. So care about us and help us out. That's all I got for this week. Dylan?
May I say one thing, P-Wagon, to all the Notre Dame fans out there and everyone listening at home? The luck of the Irish is good forever, but a Trojan is only good once.
And we'll leave you with that. Go Irish, beat SC.
Barry SC, go Irish.